Today I'm going to show you how I used a completely different color palette than my normal colors, and I mixed some old products with some new products so we can get better value out of what we already have. Let me show you what I made. The first card, I'm going to be using two Sizzix die sets, last year's Christmas cutout and this year's Moonlight from the Halloween collection, along with some Distress Oxides. I have already cut out the smaller moon. This set comes with two different sizes, but I've cut out the smaller one, and I'm going to blend some antique linen into both pieces. Now don't be too concerned about your blending here. It's all about getting a layer of color before we add some shading to our moon with scattered straw. Using my blending brush, I'm just taking the scattered straw from the edge of each of my two pieces and moving the ink towards the center. That way it just gives it a little bit of added dimension. So to finish up the moon, I'm just going to go back to the antique linen and give it a once over, smoothing out the scattered straw. Alrighty, it's time to work on our ink blended background. I'm going to start with Wild Honey, which is going to be the glow for my moon, but I need to decide where on my cardstock I want the moon to sit. So once I've made that decision, I'm going to start with a blending brush and work myself from that center outwards to create the glow. So in my latest short, I blended three colors: Wild Honey, Crackling Campfire, and Ground Espresso. Three colors that I typically wouldn't use together, but they blended beautifully. I'll link the short above if you'd like to check it out. And then I challenged myself and you, if you want to play along, to create a card with these same three colors or something similar in a different ink from a different ink company. If you'd like to join us over on Facebook at Village Card and Crafts, we'd love to see what you make with this little challenge. It really is a very small community, so we're trying to grow, and everybody contributes in their own way, and we would just love to see what you make. Inspire the group. Now that I have enough wild honey blended onto my cardstock, this is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of card. And I'm going to start with the crackling campfire because I want the glow to kind of radiate kind of an autumn sky. At least that's what I think of as an autumn sky, the reds, the oranges, and as it blends out into darkness. We don't really get autumn here in Florida, so I have to use my own imagination, and this is what I envision autumn to be. I'm going to finish blending out the crackling campfire onto the rest of the base, this card panel here. It's kind of a tomato soup, kind of orangey red, and having a completely blended out background really isn't the way the night sky is. So if it's kind of blotchy, it's okay. Next up, we're going to go ahead and trim down this panel so that I can leave myself a little border. I am using my Fiskars Shortcut paper trimmer, and I'm cutting this panel down to 4 inches by 5 1/4. That way I can leave myself a little border on my accent opaque card base. With my panel cut down to the appropriate size now, I'm going to go use my ground espresso. Now this is a deep dark brown color, and I'm just going to ink up the edges a little bit. I want to get some depth here, and the brown really does it. It turns out beautifully. So up until now, I've been using my regular sized Yosang blending brushes, and here I'm switching out to the mini blending brushes. I really just want the edges and then on the corners to come in a little bit further, so the mini blending brushes certainly do give me that flexibility. I will link all of the supplies that I use down below, and if you choose to use any of my links, at no additional cost, you will be able to support me and my channel, which I greatly appreciate any support that you provide to me. Otherwise, if you just want to take a closer look at what I'm using, That's a great way to do that too. Hey y'all, I'm Wendy from Village Card and Craft, and I want to thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with me today. If you're finding value or enjoyment from my video, I would sincerely appreciate a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button, as I am trying to reach my next goal for subscribers, and I would love to have you be a part of the Village Card and Craft community. To finish up my ink blended background, I want to get a much smoother, deeper, vibrant color on the background. So I go back to the next color. Remember, I finished with brown, so now I go back to the crackling campfire and go over all of those crackling campfire areas as well as brown, because you want to drag the red into the brown and the brown into the red. And then going back to wild honey, I'm going to deepen up that color, go back into the crackling campfire, and vice versa. So just back and forth until you get the look you're going for. So now it's time to start working on our die cuts. The moon is done, so I'm kind of placing that in the center where I want it. And going back to my Christmas cutout die set, I have already cut out all of my pieces, but I want to show you what I used for the trees. Now these are pieces of photo paper that I colored, and this is going back a long time ago. I made a ton of them. I will link that photo paper video up top just so that you can see how I made those. I've already cut out my houses. I cut them out in red and yellow. I've cut out clouds, and I cut out the love portion of the die cut also in red and yellow. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and darken up the edges to most of my die cuts. I'm starting off with the red house because that's what's going to be on the front. And the reason that I cut it out in yellow also was because I wanted to illuminate my windows with yellow. So I did keep all of the inside ports. You can see them attached to tape up at the top. But I'm just taking the ground espresso and kind of going over the edges to darken them up on both of the house pieces. The next part is clouds, and I am using frayed burlap to do the exact same thing for these cloud images. And believe it or not, I don't even end up using the clouds, but that's okay. When you're die cutting, die cut extra. That is a huge time saver. And the frayed burlap is going to go no matter what project you're using. So just store them in the back with your die cuts. It's time to get this card front put together. And y'all, if you've been here, you know I love me some Barely Arts Precision Craft glue. Um, it is just the best glue I've ever used. I absolutely love it, and I use it pretty much on everything. I am going ahead and adding glue to the top portion of my moon, and the moon is not a circle, as you can see, so you kind of got to move it around to get it in the right place, but that actually lends to piecing the die cut better than it would. Now this die cut is really versatile. It doesn't have to be a moon. If you leave those inside parts or color in the bottom, maybe a blue or a green, vice versa, you can make earth. So lots of choices here. Now I'm just going to figure out where I want my little house images, and then we'll get those glued down as well. Now to handle those little small die cuts, I am using a really fine pair of tweezers that, believe it or not, came from Harbor Freight. So just because there are a million craft supplies out there doesn't mean you have to spend a ton of money. I got a whole set of these little tweezers. I think they were like $5 a while ago. So look around at what you have to see what you can use. After adhering my little die cuts, I realized I wanted to add some water splatter. So that's what I'm doing. I've just sprayed some water into my hand and I'm just flicking it on there. And then I'm going to dab it up with my microfiber cloth. Next up, I'm going to add my little photo paper trees. Now, there are 3 sizes in this particular die set, so I cut them out in a myriad of sizes and Colors. Some of those photo papers are darker and more striated than others. So while I had the die cuts out, I went ahead and cut a whole bunch. Anything I don't use will just get put back into the back of my die cut envelope. At this point, it is time to illuminate the windows. Now, I am using a jewel picker as well as my little fine point tweezers. However, I should have done this a completely different way. It would have been so much faster if I would have just cut out a larger rectangle in the yellow and placed it on the back of the two little houses, and it would have been done. But I didn't, so here we are. I'm going to finish up the front of this card by gluing down the rest of my elements. Now the photo paper is glued down with the exact same Barely Arts Precision craft glue. It doesn't take anything special. And get the moon put down and then my love sentiment. So I did toy around with using the heart that was in yellow, but ultimately I just decided to leave it an open O with the red heart. And I did pop up just the right hand side where the E is with some very fine scrapbook.com foam strips. Now I do make all my card bases. This one is Accent Opaque 100-pound cardstock, and it is my favorite and most economical that I have found. And I'm going to finish this off with a microliner because I wanted to ground the houses and the trees. On the inside of my card, I added the yellow house and some trees along with my sentiment. So now I pose the question to you. What color do you typically avoid when crafting? Let me know in the comments below. Here's a last look at using wild honey, crackling campfire, and ground espresso as my challenge to myself. I made a second card using similar colors but in sprays. I embossed the background, used Wild Honey Distress Oxide spray and Mulled Cider mica stain, and paper dolls and a stamp. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you real soon.